Good morning. Today we're going to be discussing effective communication in virtual teams. My name is Alexander Priel, and I am with the Department of Psychology at Liberty University. As mentioned in the previous slide, my name is Alex Priel, and I'm in my second full year at Liberty University after transferring from Southern New Hampshire in January of 2023. I earned my Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology from SNHU in 2022 and then transferred to Liberty, where I completed my master's in applied psychology in March of 2024. Now I'm pursuing a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology and expect to earn my doctorate in 2025. I'm concurrently enrolled in the dissertation prospectus course, and now I'm ready to begin working on my dissertation. Beginning in January, I'm going to be taking a leave of absence from my job and will focus full time on completing the doctoral dissertation. I'm highly motivated to complete this degree, as I unfortunately forfeited 15 years of my life to opiate addiction. Therefore, I live each day as it's my last to love and serve the Lord. Jesus commanded us to love our neighbor as ourselves in NIV Mark 12, verses 30 and 31. And provided a model of how we're to conduct ourselves. In the 21st century, more and more of our life seemingly is influenced by computers and computer technology. Instead of face-to-face interaction, a significant portion of communication is now online and through virtual formats, according to Twinge in 2018. This is especially true for organizations. Therefore, this presentation will assess effective communication for virtual teams. Effective communication is critical for effective performance, reducing misunderstandings, and the alignment of goals. However, miscommunication can impose conflict, and team members can quickly lose trust in their peers, according to Panatelli and Johnson in 2008. Now, let's take a look at some common terminology for this program. Now that we've covered some introductions, let's look at some common terminology. First, it's important to have some terms that we can use and understand. Some common terms we're going to be using during the presentation are boundaries. They're objective and refer to limits that must be navigated, such as geography, time zones, and different cultures and organizations. They tend to be easily recognized. Discontinuities. They're subjective and are factors that reflect perceptions of a problem at a boundary. This often means increased effort must be put forth due to differences in expectations caused at the boundary. Communication media repertoire is a collection of communication channels and shared routines involving media use across the virtual team. Let's move on now to page 2. ICT, which is information and communication technology. Mental mode building occurs when over time, team members' expectations change and are reshaped and preferences are changed to accommodate a new situation. Mental mode maintenance is a model of expectations that apply to similar but not identical events in the future. Shared mental modes are knowledge structures within a team that provide a means for them to select actions that are consistent with others' expectations. and the virtual work environment, or VWE. It's a work environment where employees can work remotely and collaborate with each other using technology, regardless of physical location. Now, let's move ahead to a theoretical basis for effective communication. There are several theoretical bases for communication in virtual teams, or how individuals learn to communicate. The first is social presence theory, formulated by Short, Williams, and Christie in 1976. It states that the degree to which people perceive others' presence during communication varies depending on the medium used, according to Spector in 2021. The basic idea is different media can transmit and vary in ability to make others feel physically present. The more real or close a person feels to another, the greater the ability to communicate and be satisfied with communication, according to Malman and Makeda in 2021. Now, social exchange theory is another prominent theory utilized in virtual communication. It reasons that a relationship between two people is created through cost benefit analysis, and people tend to maximize their rewards while minimizing cost. That interaction with others is a series of exchanges, and that people who receive rewards feel obligated to reciprocate, according to Lim in 2024. Now, media richness theory speculates and describes how well different communication media conveys information and helps individuals understand. Basically, all communication media varies in their ability to help users communicate and change understanding. There are four main factors when considering media richness. One, its capacity for immediate feedback. Two, the number of cues and channels it utilizes. Three, the degree of personalization it affords. And finally, its ability to communicate using natural language, according to Zhang et al. In 2024. For example, face-to-face communication is richer and the ability of one to understand is high compared to email communication. Now that the psychological theories have been mentioned, let's now consider what special revelation has to say. Just as important, or even more so, is the biblical basis that effective communication is built upon. As Christian psychologists and scientists, we have a religious duty to move individuals and organizations toward Jesus Christ, according to James et al. In 2015. We know that no one stays set. Therefore, all are always moving towards Christ or away from him. We have a duty to see to the former. First, the virtual world and communication with it and using it is relatively new in world history. However, we know from special revelation that anything can become new through Jesus Christ. Second, because all things are possible in Jesus Christ, we have a duty to effectively manage communication for the good of others, our teams, and organizations. Third, because misattribution and miscommunication are essential issues with virtual communication, the principle and commandment of loving our neighbor as ourselves should always be considered and in our minds while engaging in communication. This way, our hearts will be humble and open to giving to others the benefit of the doubt. With these in mind, let's start looking at teams in the virtual world. Organizations have utilized teams more and more in the 21st century as ICT has expanded, according to Griffin et al. In 2020. However, many organizations still use traditional teams, those that communicate face to face in an office setting. However, since COVID, many organizations have begun to use more virtual teams, those that communicate solely with technology. A virtual team is one where a group of people work together on projects or tasks from different locations and use technology to communicate. They're also called remote or geographically dispersed teams, according to Chen et al. In 2021. Finally, a hybrid team is one that combines traditional and virtual elements and who work in a combination of remote and in-person settings, often required to be in an office setting or some structured schedule, according to Elves et al. In 2023. Now, communication is a major consideration depending on the type of team that's being formed. We're now going to focus on virtual and hybrid teams as we turn our attention to and introduce the virtual work environment. The virtual work environment, also known as a virtual workspace, allows employees to work remotely from any location on Earth using just an internet connection. Now, this allows for collaboration from individuals from different locations, time zones, cultures, and countries with tools such as video conferencing, cloud storage, and project management apps, according to Panatelli and Johnson in 2008. Since the COVID pandemic, 83% of the global workforce now utilizes some form of remote work or virtual communication, and the use of virtual teams increased by over 40%, according to George et al. In 2022. Therefore, learning to communicate effectively in the virtual world is increasingly important in our global workforce. Now, the global virtual team has become necessary in many organizations and industries and is a collaboration of individual employees who work together remotely across countries and time zones to complete tasks and achieve a common goal, according to Spectre in 2021. These teams have numerous benefits as they can communicate more effectively and efficiently and can assist in increasing productivity of the organization no matter where the individuals themselves are located. However, there's also significant challenges, including time zone issues, different work ethics, and cultural diversity, according to Panatelli and Chanson in 2008. However, and perhaps even more critical to their effort to work and communicate effectively with one another, is their lack of social interaction with one another, which makes it difficult to establish norms and routines. Furthermore, because they don't know one another, there's a lack of interpersonal connections, which does not allow trust to develop, according to Elves et al. In 2023. Now, organizations can remedy these issues. However, we'll get to that momentarily. For now, let's move on to shared communication practices and mental modes. Now, there are many individuals, myself included, that believe that communication is the glue that holds the structure of any team and organization together. For example, at my job, when communication fails, conflict arises. Therefore, teams need to be on the same page and share communication practices to be successful and efficient, according to Jarvana and Keating in 2021. We know from research and experience that most individuals prefer face to face communication. However, over time and through practice, virtual communication can become proficient for team members. A mental mode can help these because they're built over time through knowledge and experience, according to Panatelli and Chanson in 2008. For virtual communication, team members strive to develop a shared mental model, which is a common understanding of what's happening and what needs to be done next among a group of people to achieve goals and objectives, according to Kiley et al. In 2022. In fact, Kiley found that the use of richer media forms led to a shared mental model, increasing trust among team members. Now let's take a look at communication media repertoires. Failure to communicate is one of the most important problems for virtual teams. In fact, the failure of teams to clearly communicate can lead to stress, anxiety, reduced job satisfaction, and higher turnover in organizations worldwide, according to Spectre in 2021. However, teams that share communication practices tend to be successful and more productive. CMRs are basically the full range of communication practices a person and team regularly utilize. Being able to know and understand others, particularly in the work environment of virtual teams, allows members to make informed decisions, optimize future communications, and perhaps most importantly, form the important relationships that are critical for the future of the team, according to Lim in 2024. Now, let's turn our attention to what organizations can do to help improve team communication. This is known as organizational level initiatives. Top management and organizations have a role to play in every team. It's the duty of organizational leaders to foster a positive organizational culture, which are the beliefs, values, and norms that are shared in the organization. Climate refers to the shared perceptions and attitudes that employees have about the work environment and are determined by observing employee interactions, according to Spector in 2021. Now, some initiatives that organizations can do to foster effective virtual team communication are creating a formal communication policy, such as when to utilize certain forms of communication and what is acceptable and not acceptable. Also, they can encourage feedback, as this allows constructive advice to improve communication, as well as encouraging two-way or synchronous communication that allows resolution and context in real time. However, perhaps the most critical initiative is the implementation of transformational or servant leadership. Transformational leaders encourage communication between employees and working as a team to improve results and affect positive changes in the organization, according to Spector in 2021. Servant leaders demonstrate empathy and provide mentoring as they place the well being of others before themselves. Jesus Christ was both a transformational and servant leader, as he demonstrated how others could work to create positive change, as when he sent his apostles out two by two to preach the good news in NIV Mark 6, verse 7 through 13. Now, let's turn our attention to some common virtual teams have with effective communication. There are many issues that virtual teams face that traditional or face to face teams do not encounter regularly. Because of their virtual nature, these teams must navigate more carefully. Perhaps one of the most critical is the socialization process, which is quite different in virtual teams. We're going to cover this a little later, but the lack of personal relationships is one of the chief reasons virtual teams struggle communicating, according to Panatelli and Chanson in 2008. Other issues are with technology and the reliance on virtual means to communicate, where even slight issues can cause delays. Distractions, with many employees working from home, can also be problematic. Therefore, it's important for individuals to set up a private workspace and create firm boundaries between work and home life, according to Griffin et al. In 2020. Other common issues are low morale, language and cultural barriers, and a lack of structure. This is where the socialization process can help decrease some of these tendencies. However, one of the largest issues is the lack of in-person interaction in employee engagement. This can be navigated by managers introducing a face-to-face kickoff meeting to help employees from the same team and different teams get to know one another and help to form those personal relationships. Let's look at where the literature tells us about communication in virtual teams to get a sense of where we need to go from here. The literature on effective communication in virtual teams is littered with studies highlighting both the problems and some solutions to effective communication and how this must be different than for traditional teams. First, when there is conflict, trust between individuals and teams is reduced, and virtuality increases this. This is why socialization and establishing clear norms and expectations are so critical. Second, the level of virtuality matters, particularly early, so managers can initiate low levels of virtuality early and increase them as members get to know one another through socialization. Third, the socialization and adjustment of virtual teams is negatively affected by barriers such as geography and time zone differences. Leaders can utilize media-rich communication to combat this, such as Zoom and video conferencing. Let's continue with the past research in the next slide. Now, virtual meetings that lack nonverbal communication are perceived as boring and members lose interest quickly. However, LIM encourages as much social participation as practical, and the responsibility falls to leadership to facilitate this. Fifth, we see the importance of transformational leaders on developing trust in virtual teams. Effective communication is essential for members to develop trust between individuals and between teams. These leaders inspire and empower their followers, as Christ did when he told his followers the night prior to his crucifixion that they will do greater things than this in NIV John 14, verse 12. Sixth, we see that stress, fatigue, and workload are associated with the virtual environment. However, Standard found that members and managers can reverse this through incentives such as flexible work schedules. Finally, it's up to leadership to emphasize common goals and set clear expectations, as this promotes well-being, teamwork, and effective communication in virtual teams. Now, let's continue our look at how virtuality influences teams. The introduction of discontinuities or gaps or lack of coherence to some aspects of the work setting can have a major impact on virtual teams that traditional teams do not encounter. These discontinuities create uncertainty about some aspects of the team, which on the surface appears to be negative. However, research informs us that this is not always the case. This is since when less prior knowledge exists, it forces members to communicate more, to learn about other team members and the organization. This communication may occur with members both inside and outside of the team, leading to the building of a mental mode of what the team is and what it entails. Virtual teams do not have the luxury of walking to the office next door. Therefore, they must establish usage practices and norms of media behavior. And with these, their perceptions of virtuality may change also. It is only through the building of a new mental model that innovation of significance will occur for virtual teams. Now, let's explore some dangers of virtual interaction and communication that's common for teams. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, more and more organizations and governments have begun to utilize virtual technology on a daily basis. While this can be quicker and cost effective, it does produce some limitations and dangers when discussing virtual interaction and communication. Some of the most common follow next. First, the risk of a security breach and information being stolen. Second, when utilizing virtual communication, particularly less media rich asynchronous means, miscommunication can readily occur. For example, email provides no context, and these can be interpreted by the mood or past experience of the receiver. Misattribution or incorrectly attributing a quality feature or creation to the wrong person is also a frequent occurrence. Third, many organizations have turned to social media as a primary form of information and advertising. These can be interpreted by the receiver in different ways. Additionally, not everyone has equal access to technological means. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, is the loss of the personal connections, which hampers interpersonal relationships and therefore the ability to communicate effectively in the virtual realm. Fifth, the loss of relationships hampers the establishment of a positive organizational culture and hampers the facilitation of organizational climates that are fair and just. Finally, virtual teams and their members often operate with a greater sense of autonomy, which has been shown in past research to lower responsibility and can produce harsh words and actions. Therefore, it is critical that organizations, their leaders, and teams operate to find solutions to these issues. Let's pivot to the final section here and talk a little bit about solutions. We're going to discuss three major areas where organizations can help their virtual teams improve on their communication practices. First, it begins by instituting a socialization process that is different than traditional teams. Unlike traditional teams where members get to know their leaders in person and come face to face with team members daily, virtual teams must utilize strategies that assist them in forming relationships and developing shared practices. Second, leadership has been shown in past research to have major effects on how teams communicate. Therefore, through transformational and servant leadership, communication practices have shown to improve and help organizations prosper, according to Murtha and Srivatsa in 2023. Third, organizations can utilize the best practices garnered from years of research and implement in their own organizations for those that operate virtually. These best practices help build positive organizational cultures and climates that are essential for excellence and productivity. Let's now discuss the socialization of virtual teams and what this means for virtual team communication. Socialization is often thought of as learning the ropes. It is very beneficial for building interpersonal connections and essential for effective communication. This should include many activities for virtual teams and be ever evolving and continue to evolve over time. In virtual teams, also known as globally distributed teams, socialization may occur in three phases. The first, or the introduction phase, includes new members being introduced to the norms, attitudes, and behaviors that are encouraged for long term collaboration. Focus in this phase should be on overcoming language and cultural barriers that are an impediment to communication. A contact person in each team should be established, as well as several mini teams. The second phase is the build-up phase, and here is when a face-to-face meeting should take place. I personally feel this should occur sooner, as research implying a face-to-face kickoff is a prerequisite to success has been conducted according to Spector in 2021. However, an in-person meeting can help managers form connections and develop personal relationships that will resolve collaboration issues. They're also going to learn to relate to colleagues and form shared understandings and rules of behavior for the future. Phase three is known as renewal. And in this phase, renorming also occurs. This is accomplished through short visits to remote sites and possible relocations. Furthermore, media-rich communication is essential. So the use of video conferencing, Zoom, and Skype encourages members so they can see others' nonverbal behavior and what they're saying verbally and in body language. It also helps detect tone of voice and eye contact to understand the full meaning of communication. These practices help understand the values and traits of the local team so others can fully appreciate and interpret what is valued to them. Understanding who a person is can be vital for understanding how they interpret a situation and thus help facilitate effective communication. Remember that over 80% of all human communication is nonverbal, according to Lohman in 2002. Now, let's look at those who can initiate these in teams most effectively, their leaders. We must first define what these leader qualities are. Transformational leaders are those that can inspire and empower their followers to rise and become more than they thought they were. Servant leaders place the needs and goals of followers before their own, according to Spector in 2021. Both of these types of leadership promote trust, which can be vital for communication in virtual teams. When trust is established, members are likely to give the benefit of the doubt on misunderstandings, which can help the collaborative process move forward. They also help build a positive work environment. Doing so virtually is especially difficult, but by building on the connections in the early phases of new teams, these leaders are particularly effective. New team members, especially in the introductory stages of development, may need mentoring or a role model to follow. These leaders give this to their members, and this helps align goals, reduce confusion and misattribution, and promote effective collaboration. Perhaps most importantly, these leaders modeled Jesus Christ, who spoke about treating followers with kindness, respect, and dignity. Now, failure to do so may depress motivation and certainly induce some form of fight or flight response, which has been shown to reduce communication and honest debate, according to Griffin et al. In 2020. So, what else can leaders do to inspire effective communication in virtual teams? Let's continue on the next slide. While being a transformational and servant leader is important, there's more that leaders can do to assist in communicational practices for virtual teams. Leaders will want to practice effective communication themselves, providing a role model for the rest of the team members and being clear and concise in what they say, as well as using media rich forums for complex data. They're also going to want to provide consistent feedback to team members to improve quality and increase personal connections between them and their followers. Now, research has pointed to three qualities that leaders can portray that will have a major impact on team communication. First, they must practice cultural intelligence, which is the ability to understand and handle members in terms of diverse culture. For example, a U.S. team made up of individuals from diverse cultural backgrounds may respond to autonomy differently, and leaders must understand this. Research has shown that those from certain cultures may not question the leader under certain circumstances, and some may. Second, by building trust in the team, the leader can assist in building team cohesion. Cohesion can be built by instituting a face to face kickoff meeting so members form personal relations with the leader and other members get to know their values, passions, and their communication preferences. Third, leaders must be clear on giving or directing tasks and offer clear directions and examples. Leaders who fail in this regard may see their teams flounder and be resistant to future communication. Let's take a look at some best practices for virtual team communication in the next slide. There are hundreds of so called best practices for effective team communication in a virtual environment. However, for time, we're only going to look at a few. First, by having clear communication channels, organizations and teams can protect the security of their product and communications. Now, this can sometimes be industry specific, but it is guided by the need for clarity, confidentiality, and accessibility. Second, having regular check ins with the most media rich source helps members form personal connections and relationships, which help foster understanding and respect. Furthermore, a face to face kickoff has demonstrated positive effects on lowering misunderstandings. Third, cultural sensitivity and the inclusion is essential for global virtual teams, as members will need to communicate with those of different backgrounds, and therefore is crucial in communication and effective performance. The more complex the task, the richer the media should be to accomplish this goal. Fourth, selecting the right technology for the task is crucial in communication and effective performance. As previously stated, the more complex the task, the richer the media needs to be. Fifth, morale can be depressed on virtual teams, so frequent communication and interaction is crucial. Also, team members should also be giving consistent and positive feedback to one another. Finally, forming personal relationships through rich medium, such as face to face meetings or short visits, assist with the formation of bonds that increase job satisfaction and organizational commitment, while at the same time increasing team cohesion. Now, let's conclude this presentation. In conclusion, we've journeyed through effective communication today and now understand that virtual team communication must be approached differently than traditional team communication. Since people are the most important commodity that organizations have, and communication is the glue that holds everything together, they must be handled with extreme care. A few things to take home would be that the socialization process is crucial for effective team communication. This can be assisted again by a face to face kickoff meeting that will help team members become socialized at an increased rate and understand the attitudes, norms, and behaviors of their peers. It may take a transformational or servant leader to get the best results in facilitating team communication in a virtual forum. And this is due to the model Jesus Christ himself provided. Jesus told his followers that he came to serve, not be served, in NIV Matthew 20:28. Let virtual leaders take this truth and apply it to their teams. They may see that doing so communicates their values and makes team communication more efficient and productive overall. I want to thank you for listening today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.